If we get posed with this question on a almost daily basis, I think it's an endemic through organizations, to be honest, because large organizations typically have this problem. They're set up in a structure where they're really ready for efficiency, they're ready for scale, they're effectively a very robust structure. And that structure typically means that they're going to have a functional model with lots of different people who are actually going in with their specialist skills to go and support a product or service for this dude sitting at the top called client. But where it starts to go a little bit wrong is when you want to go and change this model, it's incredibly complex to do. Because if you think about it, you have a sales guy potentially who's got admin to support whatever that sales guy is selling. Sitting behind the admin person, you're going to have some control functions who worry about cost. Maybe there's a price change that's been requested from that client. You're going to have execution teams, implementation teams who are being requested to go out and install or configure something. You might have legal or tax. In fact, you can have a whole host of other departments. And really what happens is when setting this up, although it's robust and scalable, you have Chinese walls in place, you end up with this terrible process snake. And it's terrible because whenever there's a slight change in terms of what that client is asking for, there is no one actually in this process who can take any particular decisions about making changes quickly. You can't. The sales guys might put the request to the admin team. The admin team, maybe they're on holiday, so you've added 1 day of delay. If it goes down to the control function, they're going to take a prudent and cautious approach to making changes, and they will obviously take time to go and consider the implications. Execution might be missing out on certs of information, but they're actually sitting there working on a queue system, and it doesn't matter who that new client that's come in. They've got number 1, 2, and 3 to do. If this client is number 4, they're going to take a couple of days to get there. So you end up with quite a delayed process. You also end up with information not being handed over effectively, and so you're going to have to go back and ask for extra information. I can't solve this until XYZ happens. I don't actually 100% know what the request was here because something has got lost on the email snake that's been created alongside this. The net result is that from a client's perspective, the quality of the product and service and the efficiency of which they get it starts to deteriorate. And it deteriorates, I think, exponentially. It goes down like this. Every time you go and add a new function, a new person, even just a new system step in your process, that quality that you're giving the client is going to deteriorate. And of course, changing it is almost impossible to do quickly. You can't change it quickly when you think about, typically this is layered into some sort of hierarchy in your organization where different people, different departments reporting in to different leaders, different clusters, and it may well be for the worst case scenario, you get up to the CEO before you find someone who's actually got the responsibility to change anything at all. That also can lead to some, let's call them knee-jerk reactions of how to go and solve it, where we say, here's a couple of methods that are very typical. We'll hire some consultants. Maybe we're going to go and change one of these team leads. It's an individual person. We're going to blame this guy because they're the bottleneck, so we're going to go and change management. Maybe it's the teams in general. We're going to go and do some learning and development or incentivization. Or maybe it's a system solution that you look for. And obviously a system solution in a complex system like this is incredibly difficult to do. The net result is of that process, of the degrees of authority that you have to go and get up the organization, is that solving anything in a standard model takes a huge amount of time. And if I look at it from a cost benefit where this is profit and this is obviously loss, just by not doing something, you're losing money, your opportunity cost. Now you start to invest into some of these examples, you're losing money. And you can take months and sometimes even years before you get to a point where your work actually leads to something where you're turning things around and starting to move the dial. But there's a better way. And really, this little coffee chat conversation is to go and represent something that we've shown many, many companies at Equinox, and I've run myself, just how simple the better way can be. You can't fix this. You can't fix this easily. It's a mountain. As with any time a mountain is in front of you, don't try to go over it, go around it. And the easiest way to go around it is to go and do this model. Set yourself up a team. As within all good sort of teams, it seems 7 to 8 people is a really, really good number. Maybe there are some psychological reasons for that. We'll talk about that in future pieces perhaps, but it's 7 to 8 people. Let's start this whole thing again. Let's go and change the way that we go and solve this problem. 1, let's set up a team. 2, in the team that we set up, you will need the skills and resources that represent this process chain. Okay? So choose the necessary skilled people. And actually, even when it's a longer process than this, you'll be surprised how many are in that process who actually, as 6 or 7 people, do have the necessary knowledge. 3, set some sort of purpose for the team. And the easiest one, and it works, I think, in every instance, is set the purpose to make the client love you. That is just foundational. You cannot overstate how important it is to go and give them that purpose. Not to make you more efficient, not to go and make you a better control function or more quality. Let's go for make the client love you. A lot of these after effects will come through anyway. 4, in setting up the team, make sure that you're giving them a really chance to succeed. And the easiest way to do that is to have a team lead whose perhaps his only role is to put this barrier up between that team and the rest of the organization. The antibodies will try to kill this. You're going to need some strong people there to push back so that you're allowed to do the experimentation that you want to do. I've mentioned it now. You are looking to set up an experimentation team. Every single day, this team, to make that client love them, is going to run experiments. And in running experiments, they need to be allowed to fail. They need to be allowed to make mistakes. And that's awesome. You should be encouraging that. In fact, any one of that team that doesn't make mistakes in some way should be fired. You compare that to here, if you make a mistake, you will be fired. Here, we want to make mistakes. 5, and this is a big one. We're doing this on real clients. I'm not explaining sprint in the typical IT model where you sit in a room and you design something and you go through your test, learn, iterate. This is an opportunity to do it on real clients because the 1 million that you have to service in this particular robust process route, all you're doing with real clients is you're saying the very next client that comes through, 1 client, you're going to feed it through into this team. So let's track back and see what that means. The goal for the team is to make the client love us. The choice of the people is so you can take decisions which you don't need to refer to the mothership, the rest of the organization, to take those decisions. Yes, we're going to give you a discount. I've got the cost control person. Yes, we're going to do a same-day deployment. I've got my execution knowledge base to go and tell me whether this is true or not. And so it goes on. Our purpose is clear. We are going to experiment because with 1 client, I experiment. It doesn't matter. 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, in fact, I've never seen it. As long as you're clear to the client that you're doing something and it's different, they are going to be wanting to help. Their feedback is vital because they are real clients and you're going to get just such better data from them. What happens when you go and do that and how quickly can you start seeing results from this? So if this is something which is taking years, okay, this is something where you can see results in a very different model in as little time as a week. Setting up the team on day 1, agreeing what sort of experiments you're going to be doing on that Friday, building out what you're doing in those interim days, and then getting that feedback from your client. You're moving into something where you're starting to see the opportunity to go and really have truly exponential and rapid progress development. Now, you're going to get 3 outcomes on this, in my opinion. Maybe more, but there's 3 key ones that I see on a regular basis, and they're all positive. Okay? Outcome 1 is, and this is a beauty because it's often not expected, what actually ends up happening is that team, as it goes from 1 client, it starts doing 2 clients, it's 20, it's 100, over a relatively short period of time, perhaps as short a period of time as a couple of months. You actually start to see them replicate themselves. These teams who are looking after that 1 client, they go from doing 1 client to 10 clients to 1,000 clients, and then they start replicating that. In a matter of months, I've seen organizations transition from this batch-based sequence into very much a team-based approach to go and deal with clients. Really interesting thing about that, some expected, some not, but certainly it's something which most people are surprised about. Quality and service, there's no question about it. From a customer service perspective, it goes up. Yes, you say, that's because you've got more people, but that's not true because we also found the efficiency and the effectiveness goes up as well. And by that, I mean their productivity goes up. So the cost per unit of labor goes down. That surprises many people. You just actually have to do it to see that actually working. The third thing, which I find even more interesting, is what happens to the people side, your own employees. The levels of engagement and support for your corporate identity, for trying to service those customers, just goes through the roof. So in simple terms, you end up with a much happier workforce. That's one outcome. A second outcome, which is a bit more standard, is you're just going to go and start doing more formal sprints. Great, we've learned a huge amount of stuff. We now need to go and throw it over to the design UX tech team to go and start building that out. And that's a great result as well, because what you identify here is far more powerful and I think accurate than anything that you can do trying to bring these guys together. And the third thing is you fail. But you don't really fail because you fail fast. You fail within the space of a week, you learn a huge amount and you decide to scrap it. So if you think back to this diagram where we've got our corporate just going and spending immense amounts of time and resource to get nowhere slowly. Now you've got to this point where after a week you've learned a huge amount and you can take a new set of decisions. So we've just gone through this in a really quick sort of 8 to 10 minutes. Okay? You may or may not believe this, you may or may not have tried this. It's certainly something that works in tech. It's very rarely applied when you go out into the rest of the functions in the organization. And a lot of senior leaders get really worried about it when you mention real clients. Your only way to go and test this is to do it. It's not something you can read. It's something that you just need to go and run the experiment, and whether it actually subsumes your existing process and just deletes it so that you end up with something which is a lot more team-based, or whether you go and turn it, it doesn't matter. The point is that in trying this after a week or two, you're going to learn a huge amount, all right, which will be beneficial for the organization. And I can promise you, if you do it effectively, and I've never seen actually a company not come back with this answer, you will want to do more of this. I promise you that this model is incredibly powerful. And if you want to go and explore this more, the easiest thing that you can do is probably try it yourself. And if you want a bit of support to take you down that path, just give us a call or send us an email. The details are going to come up in a minute. Until next time, I wish you all the successes in starting to put experimentation back into your organizations.